What I see locally at high school level, and by no means am I dissing high school, because these guys are doing the best they can with their resource. But you walk into a high school gym, and there's two kind of gyms where we're at, because we help a lot of schools. One is literally like, let's cram all the weight equipment we have. We have no floor space. And the next gym will be like, here's some racks, some kettlebells, some mats, whatever. And then we're going to have a bunch of open space. And if I'm given my choice of the two, I'd rather have minimalist equipment and some open space, because I'm not going to, unless somebody has a foot injury, which we actually dealt with yesterday, I'm not going to put them on an open chain movement like a leg extension. You're not going out on the field and leg extending. Like if I want to work an extension, I'm going to do a squat. I'm going to do something that works that without having that stressor on the ACL. So when you're designing a weight room, and this is something that just kind of came to my head, let's say you have, 10,000, whatever square feet. How much of it is actual strength equipment? And how much would you allocate to open space? Would you want everything in a contained area where you could do the movement prep, the pillar prep? Because we got our facility that's being completed right now. We have a temporary one now, which we have a good amount of floor space. But I like being able to have the movement built in where you're not like, okay, time for field time. So are you more of a minimalist when it comes to equipment, obviously with the Olympic lifts, the snatches, this and that? Or are you kind of like, okay, I need all this equipment and I want to pack my weight room as tight as possible?
Yeah. Well, so I'll preface that with my wife builds commercial gyms and high school weight rooms. So we deal with this all the time. Okay. So coaches, they'll want a pec deck or a preacher curl bench or, something like that. And, the first thing that I tell them that you can perform over, and I've got a list of 100 exercises that you can perform with a barbell.
Yep.
But when you buy a pec deck, you can only do one movement with that. So just the cost effectiveness of building out a weight room with power racks and dumbbells and kettlebells is far more functional and cheaper than filling a weight room full of equipment. Now, outside of like glute ham raises or reverse hyper machines and dumbbells and dumbbell benches, the only equipment that we had in our weight room other than racks and barbells was for injured players. Mm-hmm. And that didn't matter what sport that we were training. It didn't matter if it was beach volleyball, gymnastics, or football. Most of your work was performed inside or outside of a power rack.
Yes.
With barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells, body weight exercises. Now in football, we did a lot of horizontal rowing, a lot of horizontal pulls, especially for our linemen, because you can get some posterior, subluxations of the shoulder. So it's important that your upper back is really, really thick and strong and powerful. So, we had some seated low row machines, some chest supported rowing machines, but that was very specific because when you have those linemen like they have in Alabama and Auburn and Tennessee, when those guys, if you have your arm locked out and that upper back isn't super strong, you can run into some problems. And we did a lot of dumbbell rows. We did a lot of inverted rows. So of all the variety, we did a lot of different horizontal pulls and rowing. And then the rest of it was barbells, dumbbells, and kettlebells, and reverse hypers, glute ham raises, Nordic exercises. Mm-hmm. So if you looked in our weight room, in all of the weight rooms that I have built myself, and then the ones that I consult with along with my wife, we have a big long rows of racks.
It's literally our gym.
without platforms, so we were the first school. So before, when I first started coaching, you had to have a big wooden platform, in 1980. Even at my university at Tennessee Tech in 1981, we had big wooden platforms that we lifted on. And me as a coach running from place to place, I would trip and stumble and fall. They would move. They were a nightmare to clean. So in 1999, we were going to build a weight room at Miami, and I wanted to do away with the platforms and put inlaid platforms. I wanted to make our platforms out of rubber and put them in the floor. And so we picked a company called Mondo, and Mondo said it couldn't be done. And so I kept working with the architect. I had the architect to okay it. And then I left to come to LSU, and they built the weight room at Miami, and they built the floor like I wanted it, but they bought more big platforms and put in there. So in 2004, we started building a new weight room here, and we spec'd Mondo flooring, and reluctantly Mondo came in and put in their first inlaid platforms that they had ever done. Wow. And that allowed us to warm up in the weight room instead of having to go outside, or if the soccer team or the baseball team was using the indoor, we could warm up in the weight room, and we just ran up and down the weight room. And then as the weight room got bigger and bigger and bigger, we had more open areas for doing all the different type of stuff. So I'm a minimalist. I want my platform, my racks, my bumper plates, places to do lots of chin-ups, every kind of chin-up apparatus imaginable. And then glute hams, reverse hypers, and a bunch of dumbbells. We had 2 sets of dumbbells from 5 to 200 pounds. We had kettlebells. We had 3 or 4 sets of kettlebells from 4 pounds up. I think our heaviest kettlebell was 58 kilos. So, that's almost 130 pounds. So we had about 130, almost 130 pound kettlebells. So I love, I don't get real fancy into doing a lot of kettlebells, not for football, but for other sports, yes. But we mainly did a lot of heavy kettlebell, like goblet squats, and part of our teaching progressions and rehab. We did a lot of kettlebell swings. I'm a big believer in teaching the hip hinge, and especially for a sport like football, reinforcing and making sure that those guys are strong hingers. That's super important for the game of football. So yeah, our weight rooms are very simplistic, because again, you can train if you have a power rack with a squat with J hooks on the outside of that rack. You could have someone cleaning if your weight room is big enough and you have enough bars, because I believe in buying lots and lots of barbells. Yeah. You could have someone cleaning in the floor, squatting on the outside of the rack, and then benching inside the rack at the same time. And then, whether you're doing, I'm big into unilateral leg exercises. So we would start with split squats and then add, momentum and velocity and movement to it. And we would end up having our players doing real explosive dynamic walking lunges with barbells on their shoulders. So you got to have a big weight room to do that in, and box step ups. And so, yeah, I love a big weight room with, at least a minimum of 2 bars for every rack. If you can afford 3 bars for every rack, you can have a guy doing cleans or deadlifts. You can have a guy doing squats or presses, and then you can have a guy in the rack squatting or benching or doing whatever. And so you're training, you could easily train 5 to 6 guys in a 10 by 10 area, or 10 by 12 area, versus putting them on one machine and doing one exercise. Makes no sense. I never understood that ever.